Greetings, salutations to our podcast audience.
Hello.
How's everybody
Yes.
doing?
Hello, everyone.
Ed, Nathan, y'all doing okay?
I'm doing
great.
good.
Good,
I'm doing
good.
The podcast audience won't know this, but we're early today because the Braves are playing.
That's right, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty pumped.
Yeah.
Braves actually won a playoff series and are moving on.
Yes,
Hopefully.
we hope
you
they're
go.
moving on after this.
Again,
moving
they
on.
should.
They should move
Is
on.
this the first game of the next series?
Today will be the first. So this
you
is
go.
Tuesday that we're taping. We
As soon
normally
as
tape
we
on
wrap
Tuesday.
this up, we will be heading.
So
that
some of
direction.
y'all will know. I predict a win today.
Really?
Who are the Braves playing?
We're playing the Marlins.
All right.
Marlins.
Yep.
Is this like they don't call them conferences, right?
We are
is
in the
this like
same division.
Yeah.
So the same. So this is a division.
No, it's
championship.
just all the different this year.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay.
screwed up.
It's just that one of the
So this
division-
doesn't determine who goes to the World Series. That's what I'm trying to
Not
get.
yet.
This is not a
two
championship.
rounds away from that.
Okay.
We're two rounds
How
away
many
from
rounds are there in baseball?
Well,
players?
normally they're only three.
There were four
but
this
they're
year.
more this year.
Okay. I already feel like the NBA playoffs are long enough. NBA is the only thing I watch. And
Well, they're
it feels
trying to
like
keep up.
baseball's getting even longer.
Baseball's
man.
trying to keep up. We
But
let half the
How many
NBA
games you have to win a series?
This one 5. You have to win.
You have to
three.
win
You have to win
win
3
three.
of
Oh.
5. You have to win 3 of 5. This
Okay.
round is 5 games.
That's better. Everything
The
you got to
first
win
one was
4
two
in the
out of
NBA.
three, though.
The first one.
Oh, yeah. See, that's how the NBA should be. NBA does
Well,
4. You have
back
to
in
win.
my day, the NBA did have a first round. Those 2 out of 3.
Oh, okay. Because
But money drives everything,
Yeah.
so you got to have more games.
Gotta have
I
some more
get it.
games. Yes, sir.
get
All right. So you're predicting a win.
I'm predicting a win
I hope that's hope
for
that's
the whole
good.
series for sure. I'm just going to go ahead and say today too, but the listeners will know by this time whether I was right or not.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go for the whole series? though?
We're definitely going to win the series.
We're going to win. How many games?
I think I'm going to say 4.
All right. We got him on the record.
I'm
All
going to
right.
say 4.
He is on the record.
Say
4
we're going to
games.
win
Braves in 4.
Braves in 4.
All right. So by the next podcast,
We
should know.
We should be in the next round. I predict with the Dodgers.
yeah, I would have predicted that as well. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, let's.
But I think they're going to win in 5.
You think the
the
Dodgers
next
are
one.
going to
Next.
The
win?
Dodgers are going to have to play all 5.
Okay. Okay.
I may be wrong.
Want to keep going with your predictions, or you want to?
No.
Okay. All right. We'll just stop there. All right. You've heard it from Ed. Let's hope he. I hope he's right for at least for the Braves.
Yeah.
I don't care about the Dodgers. All right. All right. Question from our virtual lobby.
Has
we
nothing to
virtual
do-
lobby.
Does it have anything to do with baseball?
Maybe.
You could. Oh, that is true.
Okay, I was going to say,
Maybe.
otherwise I don't really care.
There was
Maybe.
a question that sort of linked.
This first question might be about baseball. What's the best gig / social event / game you ever attended?
So I answered this question in our virtual lobby. I was talking with my good friend Donnie Dorsey in the virtual lobby,
Which was
this
quite
week.
entertaining. I just have to
Yeah,
say.
okay.
I
Well,
watched
thank
that.
you.
It was
Thank
good
you.
entertainment.
Yeah, I thought Donnie's
I
always,
also thought it was entertaining with him and Donnie.
Donnie's got good stuff. Donnie's answer I thought was a great one. He got to see Allen Iverson play when he played for the Sixers, and Allen Iverson would have been fun to get to see
Yes.
in his prime. So that was his. Mine was, I believe, I said we went and saw Linkin Park in concert, and that was pretty wonderful. So that was
Nice.
that was mine.
As a true metalhead, I have to laugh at you
Oh, I understand. I understand that.
because Lincoln Park is what we metalheads make fun of.
Oh, I understand that.
But
I
that's
understand.
okay.
That's
But they were great back in the day.
I will say I enjoyed Lincoln Park.
They're not bad. I have to admit.
It's not true metal. Not true
Not
metal.
true.
New metal with a U.
Yeah, that's the part. That's the kind that metalheads look down on.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
But
I understand.
that's just because they're
Everybody in music's looking down.
'Cause they
on
got-
That's
somebody.
right. You gotta have somebody to look down
And it's
on.
usually whoever gets paid. So
Probably,
if you
yeah.
get paid.
Well, you
So-
resent the ones that are getting. all
I'll
the-
answer my favorite concert, which will, be a surprise to
This'll
some
be
people.
fun.
And this is a part of looking down too, in that my favorite all-time concert, which does not fit my genre. As you all well know, I don't like country music.
Yeah.
My favorite concert's Willie Nelson.
Wow.
I saw Willie Nelson as a replacement concert for Leonard Skinner. I had tickets to Leonard Skinner. They were supposed to be in my area the week after they crashed. And so we got our money back, and we were determined to go to a concert. And so Willie Nelson was there, and we went and saw Willie. And it was by far the best concert I've ever been to.
Well, to take up for your comment, and this is again looking down on certain styles of music compared to what now is called country. He ain't country.
No, that's for sure.
So I'll say that.
And that concert for sure was not.
Yeah.
The worst concert I've ever been to was, and this will probably upset everyone in the South. We got free tickets somehow. I don't remember how I got free tickets. I think it was at Lakewood, or it might have been Verizon Wireless. We went and saw Jason Aldean and Florida Georgia Line and somebody else who's pretty popular in country.
I remember when you went to that concert.
Yeah, me and my older brother John, his wife Sarah, and my wife Jennifer, we all went. And John, I think, liked one of the bands, which is why we ended up going. But none of us paid for the tickets, which is why I went, because I love live music.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm sure it won't be terrible. It was by far the worst concert. And not because the people weren't that great. I'll say this. Everyone who's like, you shouldn't go to hip-hop concert, that's a rowdy crowd. I've been to hip-hop concerts. I've been to metal concerts.
Yep.
There ain't never been a crowd I felt more unsafe in than a country crowd.
I believe
Those
it.
people had pre-gamed alcoholically coming to the game. I felt
Yes.
unsafe for them. I felt
Yes.
unsafe for me. I felt unsafe for everybody. It was a bad time.
And I'll say, as a guy who's been to many metal shows, those are some of the best crowds.
Because
I've
people
ever
are
been in.
into the music. They're there for
yeah,
the music.
we're
At
music
the concert I
nerds.
went to, no one was there for the music.
No. Even the people that are in the mosh pit,
Yes.
they're some of the nicest folks you ever want to be around. They're really concerned about your safety and that
Yep.
you have a good time. They're just good
It's
people.
been the same. Any hip hop show I've ever been to has been the exact same way. People are there for the music. I'll say this: out of everything we've said lately that people are going to get upset about, this may be the one that gets
Yeah.
people really upset.
The
when
country
we
music
going
fans.
at country music fans, we might lose some people over there.
That's okay. Country music. Ugh.
Yeah, that's right.
with you on that.
That might really get some people going. All you Jason Aldean fans out there coming
Yes.
at me. But I do remember some people slow dancing to "Big Green Tractor" by Jason Aldean, which if you haven't heard, I just thought, did people legitimately slow dance to this song? But I mean,
Yes.
somebody.
I just want to say that's the most cliched country thing ever. I didn't even know that was a song.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Yes.
a song called Big Green Tractor.
Something
All
my
right.
big green tractor.
Okay.
Something
of course.
faster.
And it's a song you slow dance to.
Well, it's kind of like a
Yeah, I
laid back
I think he's
jam.
inviting his girlfriend to ride on it.
Ride on the big green tractor.
I have heard this song before.
Yeah, it's I don't get what's going on. But some of y'all are like, I had my first kiss to Big Green Tractor and Nathan's making fun of it and I don't like it.
It's the most cliche thing ever.
It was bad. But somebody made some magical memories
You know
that they
he
won't
wrote
forget.
that by putting that into the computer, country music generator.
Oh yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's called Nashville.
Yes. They just put it
All right. Now that we've all made enemies, I'm going to skip to the next question. What is your biggest pet peeve in traffic?
All right, once again, I'll go first what y'all think because I've already answered this. Mine is not necessarily what other people do, but outside of
I
my
saw yours in
vehicle.
the lobby.
Oh, you saw mine, yes. My wife, and we just had this because this weekend we were on vacation and we drove to Myrtle Beach and drove back. And so going through Atlanta traffic and constantly having to, they're braking about 150 feet ahead of me,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
having
More
to-
than that.
Yeah, more than that. Or just, because once again, driving through Atlanta traffic, people who I don't even have to brake for, they're just swerving directly in front of me, and somehow that was my fault that they swerved in front of me. So anyway, my wife this time just said, "Yeah, I'm just gonna go to sleep," which she didn't go to sleep.
No, they
but
don't. They never
She
do.
promised to go to sleep, and she didn't. So
I used to think that was a universal husband-wife thing, but I have a really good friend who is a male. That's him all the
funny.
time.
With
When-
his wife.
with anyone
Anybody.
when he is not driving.
Gotcha.
That's a control problem.
Yes.
I also have said that.
That's what I think.
When he is not driving, he must. We should put a bag over his head.
There you go.
I hate to say it, but unfortunately, you and I are on the same page.
There you go.
My wife is the same way, but she has a patented noise that she
Oh,
makes, and it's
interesting.
hers, and it's the sound that people make in like horror movies, which always scares me.
Yes,
It's something to the
terrifying.
effect of like
Yes.
that, and when she does it, I do that inside,
Yes.
and I jump, and then I start looking around. I do the fight or flight thing. I look around, I go,
Yes.
what? And then she goes, oh, that car just put the brakes on. And I'm like, and And then I've got the adrenaline going.
Yeah.
So now I'm really ticked
An
off.
argument begins.
Then an argument starts, and
Which brings us to this week's series that we'll be starting.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little
Triggered.
ad. Triggered.
That's
you
right.
You got triggered.
I got triggered.
This week I was driving, and one of my daughters is in the back seat and goes, "Ah!"
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that probably was terrible on the mic, but yeah, screams like that. And I said, what? And she goes, spider, spider. And I said, do not scream when there's a spider in the car. It wasn't in the car. I saw it on a tree outside. And I said, well, then definitely don't scream if you see it in the, because I jerked the car. Not that hard. We would have flipped, but
Yes.
you know what I mean.
So there you
Becky's is similar to that. So we've had that same issue. Becky has gotten significantly better as 40 years, she's better. But the one that's been with her the whole time is she doesn't see well at night. And yet she wants to control the car when she can't see well. It has caused many arguments of, I go, what's wrong? Well, I don't really know what's happening. Okay.
So all I'll say about this question is I hope our wives don't listen to the podcast.
I know for sure my wife doesn't listen to this podcast.
Mine doesn't
and
either.
I also
she
know
attends
my
in
wife does
person.
not listen to this.
So
What does that say for the people who do? Our own wives don't listen to this.
Yeah, you can tell them what we
Well,
said.
you
and they're
probably
like,
can't-
oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That's what my wife would
Yes.
say.
that's why I don't listen
I
to
don't
it.
listen to it. I assume he
I don't
talks
listen to
bad
them.
about me all the time.
Or I listen to you all the time. Why do I want an extra
Well,
hour?
that's
Why do I
right.
want to
That's-
listen to that?
which I totally can
I
sympathize
understand.
with.
I can
I understand completely.
I also don't listen to this podcast, so that's okay with me.
Well,
if
you were involved in it. Why were you
That's
listening
right.
to
I don't
it?
need to go back and hear it. So
All right, now on to questions that people actually want to hear the answers to.
I do want to say this is a fine drink. If you haven't,
Sunkissed Diet Sunkissed Orange. It is pretty good.
we have these.
It is good.
This is a this week thing. At the
Yeah,
office,
you never know what you're going to get at the
Like
CCC
limited
fridge.
edition drinks now
CCC fridge.
because of the aluminum shortage.
Who knew?
So, but like I said,
COVID is killing aluminum.
who would have thunk? All right, listener questions. We did have some turned in this
Oh,
week. Some
good.
people. One I'm not sure is it completely serious, but we'll throw it out there and see what y'all have to say about it.
We will answer it. Seriously.
We will answer it.
Seriously.
Maybe. Here's a question. You mention sponsor a podcast often. What does that mean, and what does it entail?
Oh,
That does sound like a very serious question.
that does, and probably one we should have thought through beforehand. But let's go into it right now.
Jump right in.
I think you
Honestly,
should-
most often what we mean, I think I'm usually the one that says it. Most often, I just mean it as a joke.
That's right.
But there are actual podcast sponsors and
There are.
such like that. So if you want answers on that, I'm
Well,
sure
and
other people
I would just like to speak seriously on this subject. This is really a question for our manager Joel,
yes.
and you should probably just reach out to Joel and ask him, how do you go about sponsoring the podcast? What benefits do you get
That's right.
from it?
Yeah, get
The
Joel.
main
We need
thing-
Joel to get some kickbacks.
The
from this
main thing we
podcast.
would want to know is what benefits do we get?
Yes.
Yes, that's
Right.
right.
You and here's the thing. It's not a very high bar to jump over because we pretty much take anything.
We just
yeah.
got free food.
We got free food.
vegan food,
Not
and
not
we
that
were
it was
super-
bad. It was
no,
amazing.
It was really good. We
No.
were happy with it.
But we were so excited
and
just to
We
have-
did not vet it though beforehand. We did not
No.
go into the company's personal
No.
ethics or business ethics.
It was
or-
here.
But
And so
I'm
that
going to
was
say,
it.
just to push him out of the way, we might have to, you got to have a conversation with Joel. So email Joel.
There you
at
go.
Joel at community-christian.net.
There you go.
There you go.
I like that. Yeah.
That's right. And maybe you could sponsor.
You could
Maybe
sponsor.
you could
it.
sponsor
We
it.
could sponsor. I don't know what you want to give us, but
We'll take it.
If you bought a star, you can buy stars in the sky. Buy a star, name it the Community Christian Anywhere podcast, and we can do that. That'd be a thing. I don't know what else.
Interesting.
We could do all kinds of
great.
stuff.
That's a really good question.
I
though.
like
I
that.
like that question.
You like that? Okay. So I hope that was a good answer. Here's the other one, and this one is more serious. So can we be serious? For a
Okay.
moment? Having not prepared at all for this,
Oh, okay.
it's going to
All
be
right.
tough.
Well,
so here we go. Why do you think so many Christian churches choose not to do communion each week? As opposed to what we do at Community Christian, we actually observe communion every single Sunday. They would like to know why other churches don't.
I think you probably get a better answer by asking them. I can
Yes.
tell
I
you why
think
we
so.
do.
Yes.
I can tell you the reasons I've heard from people why they don't, but you honestly should ask other somebody who doesn't what their answer is. I
Yeah,
think.
I would agree with that.
Because I
Because
can promise
they
you,
would not have chosen any of the three of us to be their spokesman.
no,
That's
and they have thoughtfully and prayerfully
Yes.
considered their
Yes.
reason to do it, just as we have thoughtfully and prayerfully considered ours. So
And no one, I don't believe there are any churches that have the tradition surrounding communion that went into it and goes, I know what the Bible says. I'm going to do this instead.
That's right.
Yes,
That's right.
Yeah, most often it's just we're interpreting it or understanding it differently, and but all of us are trying to follow Jesus and
Yes.
trying to follow the commands. We just don't all necessarily
Yes.
agree on the same thing.
And it's another one of those issues because of what all you guys just said. It's another one of those issues that we can see differently and yet still not divide over necessarily.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it has been that kind of thing, I would say, particularly with communion, because you may not know this if you've only been a community Christian, but even within churches that take it every week, in my lifetime, there have been ways that you take it every
Right.
week, like the way we do it at Community Christian. There would be people that would consider the way we do it
Yeah.
to be so antithetical to what God would want that they would not continue to come to church here. Just to give you an example, of people that would agree with us, it should be every week. They would believe, that only an ordained person should handle the
Right.
elements and that you shouldn't touch it in any way.
Yeah.
Or if they believe other people can handle it, it should be people who have reached some standard, like an elder, they should handle it. Or there are people that believe there can't be a division of the cup or a division of the bread, that those elements themselves have to be a single cup. And so it's sad that we've taken something
That was
because
meant to unify.
it was meant to be a unifying thing, that we remember Jesus, and we've allowed it to divide because.
But that's the way everything is.
It is the way
Every
everything is.
single thing that has divided the church universally was never meant. It was because that wasn't Jesus's intent. We were all supposed to be one, and we've picked these things as this is a non-negotiable. I'm going to die on this hill, and if you can't change to be the way I want, I'm going over here, and that was never the intention.
And it doesn't mean that Jesus didn't have a singular intent, but if he, on some of these things that it clearly is not clear enough that everybody can agree, he probably, the singular intent that he might have meant at the time might not have mattered as much as we would like it to.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Jesus was just saying, I'm going to leave this as open as I can. It just may mean it wasn't as important to him as we want to make it.
I just don't think it's in the character of God, having seen him in the person of Jesus, to when we, finally do see him face to face, he's going to go, gotcha.
Exactly.
There was that thing that I really didn't make clear, but you didn't get it right, and therefore, somehow you're in the wrong.
Well, and certainly we all understand that we, even at our church where we have a reason we do it the way we do, we all understand we are not taking communion in the way that Jesus or the first church would have done it. It's in a different setting. It's in a different environment. The elements themselves are a little different. We have chosen, different kind of things. So even among those things, as you said, it is symbolic by its nature. And there's this when we talked about, and I think we've answered this, so someone can tell me, we've answered before about sacraments, right? Because I remember talking about that. So even by the nature of sacraments, you're taking ordinary elements, and by the meaning that you're imbuing to them, that makes them sacred.
Yes.
And so that's the nature of it. And so anyway, yes, I agree. We will divide over anything that we can divide over, which we've been talking about many times on this podcast.
Yeah, the heart, again, it's hard for us to miss. And what's interesting to me is all of this, and there are some things Jesus is really clear on. Like, it's hard to read John 17 and not see that Jesus really, really, really wants his people to remain one, to remain united. And yet we've chosen all kinds of ways to say, yeah, but if he had understood how important this was, it would be worth not being won over.
Sure.
And I just recently heard this, and I thought, here's your Dallas Willard one. I'd never heard this one before, but it was a quote, and I think you guys listen to us. This may not have been that podcast, so I don't know. You guys can tell me. But there's a podcast of someone who's a student of Dallas Willard, and they said it's when we disagree on something, that's absolutely the wrong time to divide.
Yes.
That's the most important time to draw near to one another. And I would say all of us, I know this is not an answer, so this probably once again gets, I would think all of us would say probably the biggest areas of growth in my life have come when I've disagreed with someone else. That it's in that moment where I'm not saying that I've always gone, oh, I was totally wrong. Often it's in the way that I handled correcting somebody and telling the truth. But often it's been, I said, you're so wrong, this is so dumb, but because I refused to back away from the relationship, I did correct my thinking, and I did correct my behavior, or I corrected something. And so often, and this doesn't escape the church, human beings in our relationships, when there's any discomfort, any conflict, we just want to pull away and walk away, and we don't grow because of that. We're stunted in our growth, and so that happens in the church just as much.
Even in every one of those instances you talked about, Nathan, even if the only growth that happened in that encounter was that I learned better how to love an enemy,
Sure, yeah,
growth
absolutely.
took place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or how to
Which
speak
is something
the truth.
most of us never learn. We think I've got to convert an enemy into a friend, or I've got to, weaken what I thought for the sake of this.
Yeah.
There is a way to love somebody without ever them changing or me changing.
Yes. So, all right. On to Sunday. This past week, we wrapped up the Voices series. We heard from two really smart dudes. And that was one thing that hit me while we were listening to that interview. I was like, both of these guys are really smarter than me.
Yes.
Even more than most people are smarter than me. These guys are really smarter than me.
The other thing that came out, and I had a really person who has a lot of intuition about spiritual life in our congregation say to me afterwards about one of the two. He said, he's not only really smart, he comes off as being humble
Yes.
and smart. And I said to him, I've seldom met a person who's really smart who also doesn't have a lot of humility. There are a lot of people that really think they're really smart.
Yes.
And myself included in that often, who don't have a lot of humility.
Yes. So they talked to us about the intersection of science and faith. And so the first question that I thought we would wrestle with a little bit is, why do you think that's true of most Christians? Why do we see that within the church so much that we tend to want to pit science and faith against one another? Where does that instinct in us? Because I think maybe some people feel as if it has to be that way.
I think because the places I have seen it most often in me when I thought there was a conflict, and in other people when I wind up talking to them, is because they're trying to use one discipline to answer a question that the other discipline should be answering, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're trying to use a scientific method to answer a philosophical question, which is not possible, or to use philosophy to answer a scientific question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of where it comes down to, and I think this is on both sides, but I'll just talk about the religious side here, is I think both of those carry so much cultural power, or they used to, and Dr. Keller spoke to this a little bit in his answer, but they both carry a lot of cultural power. What I mean by that is there's a lot of influence and a lot of sway, not as much, I'll say, on the religion part in America as it probably was at some point, but that is held by being, hey, we have the answers. You can come to us for answers. We're the ones who have the answers. You can come to us. And so that tempts us to step into things that we necessarily don't have the answer for, because that's not the kind of answers we're trying to get. And vice versa on the other side. And so, and even if you hear this stuff, I watch a lot of nature documentaries with my daughters, because they're very interested in science and the natural world and all that kind of stuff. And so we watch a bunch. And I was watching one about space the other day, and the person who hosting it is an atheist, and by the nature of what they're teaching, they get into church and and so very much into Galileo and how the church handled that and all this kind. And so they're very much pitting it with science versus religion. And even in there, that really is the birth of a lot of this, with the Enlightenment in Western Europe, which influenced so much of what America is, comes out of the Enlightenment. And a lot of that was science coming in and going, hey, we have all the answers. You don't need church anymore. Because that's effectively what this show was getting to is science has now outgrown church. You don't need that anymore because they were answering questions, but that was all superstition, as you said, not answering the same questions, but that didn't matter. And he talked about scientism on Sunday, that there's this kind of scientism of, well, if that's what science says, which is very similar to, because once again, I talk to a lot of young people who are going to college for the first time. There is a very religious way that science is spoken about, especially in university settings and places like that is very similar to the Bible says it, that settles it. Their answer often is, well, that's what science says, as if there's one science book that explains everything. Science says it, that settles it. And both sides, it's a way, in my opinion, to gain cultural power of, you can trust us, we have ultimate truth, we have ultimate this. But the church, as you said, if we're stepping into truth in areas that's not the kind of truth we're trying to lead people to. We're leading them to God, who he is ultimate truth.
Right.
He has all truth. And so any scientific claim that gets proven as true is going to point back to God. It's never going to disprove God. And so we don't have to be afraid, because when we get afraid, the fear is, well, what if people stop trusting in us? And now we got this. And same difference, I believe there are those in the scientific community that are also going, they'll stop trusting in us, and it's on both sides of the issue. But I think that's the religious part, is we often get afraid science is somehow going to disprove what we believe.
It's when you feel threatened, and that's what I've seen, the reaction on both sides, but particularly because I'm on this side of the church, and I've seen a lot of Christians that I think they get real fearful, and they think, well, we're going to lose something, or and I often want to go, well, if you really are going to lose something, then maybe what you were putting your hope in is not very solid, So don't like you just said, fear truth.
It's like after we had near-death experience when we were talking about that a few weeks ago, and somebody said, I'm not sure I buy all that, and what if it comes out all that was a hoax? What will that do to your faith? And I go, it won't do anything to my faith.
Nothing.
Because I wasn't basing my faith on what these people had to say. I based my faith on what one guy, what happened in history when he stepped out of the grave alive, and the movement that came out of that, not out of this one thing.
Absolutely.
Do I admit that if the resurrection were proven untrue, that it would shake my faith? Yeah. My whole faith is built on that one thing.
Well, and I think
it's built on that.
I think scriptures are going to make that very clear.
Yeah, Paul
said that. Paul said that. If Jesus is not raised, your faith's in vain. Go do something else.
But whether Genesis 1 is literal 7 days or it's not literal 7 days, doesn't shake my faith at all. The Bible, I mean, honestly, I know enough about the Bible. The Bible's not trying to make that claim.
Nope.
Could that be? Maybe it is. Science, that's not what we're trying to do. The Bible's not trying to do science.
Nope.
It's not.
Nope.
So none of that shakes my faith. So anyway, that's what I would say about that.
I agree.
I have noticed, I will say on this, you were talking about the fear thing, and I feel for this, and I do think it's a danger in our world. I think I read a synopsis of a book that I've now ordered that I haven't, I love books, so I haven't started reading, and it's along the line of that we're into an authorities age. That everything in our age, that if you're an authority, we don't want to hear from authorities. I want to discover things for myself.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've watched during our pandemic as people just go, well, you can't trust science.
Right.
Well, we're in a lot of trouble if you can't trust science. I mean, you're going to have a hard time dealing with the gas in your house. You're going to have a hard time if you doing with your car. All of that. If you don't trust science, got a lot.
Do people really mean what?
No, they don't.
They say it.
They mean on this thing.
That's right.
I don't want to hear what they have to say.
Exactly.
And then I've watched people I know that are on the science side, friends of mine that are Christians and scientists who work, for organizations that they feel threatened. So they're trying to pump back up science like, well, truth can't be threatened.
Right.
That's right.
I mean, it's just true. It can't. So the fact that you don't buy it, I mean, again, I love Dallas. Again, Dallas Willard used to say, reality is, I'm going to say.
What you bump up against.
It's what you bump up against.
Say you find out that you were wrong.
Yes, that's right. Reality is what you bump up against when you find out that you're wrong. And what that means is I didn't think this scientific thing was true. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, I got COVID.
Yeah. Here we go.
And, I have learned a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting when you find someone who, was denying something at one point, and then they have an experience.
Yes.
And then it changes everything.
Yeah.
And that's usually the difference. And that's, like you said, you bump into reality.
Well, and I think, though, that goes back to what we were talking about even earlier, so both on science and faith part, the reason I think the reason we're so threatened by it is ultimately, and I think this also goes back to a lot of the Enlightenment stuff, at some point we all kind of just agreed, and we all think this, that most of my life is experienced in my brain, that everything I experience, I'm processing here, that I don't really have much of a body. My body's not, I can't really trust things, or even this emotional side of me. Emotions are untrustworthy. The most trustworthy thing is what happens in my head, which leads to a lot of things that lead to scientism and things like that, because then at that point, science, which in our minds we're primarily processing through here, happens that way. Same thing on the faith side. I need to rationally prove everything, and I need to get to this. Everything has to be rational. But so much of our life is not just experienced in a rational way. That's a part of who we are, and it's a very integral part. As we said on Sunday, I thought very well of saying, God's not asking you to turn your mind off. He's not saying don't have a rational brain. But if you do approach everything in life, I would argue even your approach to science is purely just, whatever can be rationally proven is the only thing that can be trusted. What you're ultimately doing is making yourself the authority, because then you're saying, I have to know it. No one else can tell me.
Well, and you're also cutting off a part of your discovery methods. Yeah. I can't use what I feel, my senses, because they aren't all
not trustworthy.
They're not trustworthy. I cut off some of the discovery, which science is about. It's a discovery method.
And so we do get ourselves into this hyper-individualistic state, which I think we're seeing a lot currently. And this goes back to the conversation on Sunday in people's responses to COVID, which may be seen in this anti-authority thing as well. When I become, in my mind and my logic, because once again, as we've said before, everyone's decision is logical and rational to them. Mm-hmm. Yes. So there is no one logic that we all can just look at and go, oh, that makes sense. Everyone is logically processing it on their own. You eventually say, well, I'm the authority, which leads to a religious side. We see this on the religious side. I'm picking and choosing the things I'll follow and I'll believe and I'll trust in, instead of giving myself over to God, over to Jesus, and allowing an authority outside myself to be in charge. Or you're now doing the same thing with something like science and going, well, those scientists, because they believe what I've already agreed to, I can trust them. But any data outside that, and it's why you see the kind of arguments, I believe, it's why you see the arguments we see on Facebook and social media over masks and over the vaccines and every one of these kind of things is, I can't trust the authority outside. That doesn't logically, rationally make sense, as we say, to a common sense argument, as if common sense was a higher sense than any other sense.
Well, everybody who says I don't trust authority is trusting some authority.
Well, they're making themselves the authority.
Or some other body that told them I can't trust that authority.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So anyway, and I think that part becomes dangerous on either side. If you're more I don't trust religion and I trust science, or if you're more I don't trust science, I only trust religion, or in the end, I would argue you may only be trusting you. And that's even more dangerous, where I'm only trusting my ability to perceive, understand.
Well, because the one person that can't be fooled into thinking I am always right is me. Mm-hmm. Because no one has as much evidence. Every individual is in this place. No one has as much evidence of how often you've been wrong as you do.
Yeah.
Right.
You may not admit it to anybody else. You have been wrong by the time you're a teenager. You've been wrong thousands of times. Mm-hmm. By the time you get to be my age, it's billions of times you have been wrong. And you can act like you're not, but to trust yourself, wow, you've been wrong so much, you wouldn't trust anybody else that was wrong as much as you were.
We're in an election cycle right now, and so you're going to hear all that of, let's bring up their past record and that. If I brought your past record up to anybody that you know of yourself, you'd go, that is an untrustworthy source. Never trust that source.
Next week, everybody will be able to say, Ed thought the Braves were going to win.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Can't trust him anymore.
I have been to many World Series games where I thought the Braves were going to win.
Yep.
That's because it wasn't always a rational decision.
No, it's an emotional.
Thought he was being rational.
I felt it. I hoped it. I wanted it.
It was, and you and I have said this before. I remember we had this conversation. Sometimes I'm I'm scared to go back and look at old sermons that I preached. Because I have changed my way of viewing some things. Not necessarily the core of what I said, but the way I would nuance things. Like, I just listened to one of my favorite preachers, one of our favorite scholars, Greg Boyd, and he taught a message on Sunday. And at the end of the message, they did a Q&A, and they were asking him about a book he wrote at one time, which one of my favorite books he ever wrote. And he said, yeah, it's probably time for me to put out a volume 2 of that, because he said, I still believe in it, but I would nuance it differently now. And I'm to the point in my life where I appreciate that more than I do certainty in most. Because if I can be with somebody that said, yeah, I was thinking this way at one point, but I learned some things, and now I see it a little differently, and so I would adjust my opinion of that right now. I trust that person, because that's a person that's open to evidence. They're going to go where the truth lies.
Well, and they're at least starting at the point that all of us who are willing to be honest know I don't believe exactly everything I believed 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Or last year.
Yeah.
And if I do, that's a problem. I'm not open to any new information. I'm not open to anything new.
Yeah, the world is certainly vastly different than it was this time last October.
Yes.
Anybody that doesn't think that, wake up, dude. You've been in a coma. Everything's different in the last 6 months.
And wherever I drew the line back on my beliefs about some things, I didn't have all the information then.
Right.
I don't have all the information today.
No.
And so I should be growing into the truth more and more every single moment.
Yes. Well, because once again, maybe this is a good little wrap up on this question. If Jesus is the truth,
yes.
Every day I'm learning new things about Jesus, because it's a relationship. I'm growing closer to him. Mm-hmm. So my understanding of the capital T truth of Jesus, but also all the little truths of our world, should also be growing and changing, because I'm understanding him. I'm understanding myself and my relationship to the world and other people better. Mm-hmm. I hope all the time I'm learning more about that.
I think I've told you all, I've said this at many places. About a month ago, I heard somebody say, and it's what I now am saying like it's my own. Somebody was saying, you said this, and he goes, well, I always reserve the right to get smarter.
Yes.
Right, yes.
Yes.
He said, you're right, I did say that, but I reserve the right to get smarter.
I'm smarter now. I know something different than I knew then.
And that's been something that's frustrating. I hate to get political, but it always frustrates me in a political season when we always see people bringing up these past statements that people made from sometimes 40, 50 years ago, and they say it like, well, this is what they said. Okay, they said it. I hope they think differently now, and from what I see now, they do.
Yeah.
And that's great, you know. So I always see that as a positive when people bring up, well, he used to believe this.
On every anniversary with my wife, she reminds me that when we got married, I told her, you won't have to worry about it. I will be dead by the time I'm 40. And so she always goes,
You lied.
Man, I got a bad deal. You're 20 years overdue to be gone.
That's right.
Let's hope she doesn't,
Oh, I know.
that.
try to bring that home.
Exactly. I've said to all my kids, if something automatically happens quickly, have her investigate.
There you
That's
go.
right.
You heard it here. All right. This will probably be our last question we'll have time to get to, but I thought we'd turn the corner because they did in the talk on Sunday, and then Tim Keller did, I thought, a great job of helping us see that question, where is God in this pandemic, which really always comes back to the classic question of what about pain and suffering? How do you reconcile a good God with pain and suffering? And I just thought he did an excellent job. I don't think we can do any better here. So
if you didn't watch that, you should go watch it.
Yeah, go back and watch that. But I just thought we would give a little bit of a reaction to that, our thoughts on his take on that, just what you gleaned out of it, what it spoke to you about.
I remember the first time I heard a similar response. Once again, it was when I was in college. This was one of the questions that was very difficult for me. I was in a philosophy class, and someone brings up what's referred to often as the theodicy, which is the problem of evil, right? All-powerful God, all-good God, how can there be evil and suffering? Either he's not all-powerful and he can't stop the suffering, or he's not all-good and he could stop the suffering and he just doesn't care and he doesn't do that. And I did not have any good answers. I mean, I probably tried 2 or 3 weeks throwing out all these, and the guy just shut him down. I didn't have it. And then I remember at the time I was listening to another speaker who's been so instrumental, and I actually read his book, The End of Religion is the name of the book. Bruxy Cavey is the name of the guy. He's in Canada. And he gave a series that was on this, and his answer was so similar because he's the first person I ever heard say what. Now I know we've talked about Greg Boyd saying of a cross-driven theology that everything about Jesus is revealed at the cross, and he said the answer to suffering is also found at the cross, which is that in all good and all powerful God shows up at the cross and says, I am taking care of evil and suffering. Here's what it looks like. I take all the evil and suffering on the world and I put it on myself. And I'm going to deal with it in this way. Which I know, and I struggled often with the question of, so then why do we have it? And he also gave this explanation I've heard other people give of, it's very much like at the end of World War II, there's, VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. That's the war's finally done, but the actual final blow of the war happened on D-Day, that the war actually ended in Normandy, that's when the back is broken of the thing. And there were still some big battles, right? Battle of Bulge, I think, is after that.
They thought they were going to recover and they couldn't.
Right. And so there's all these evil forces for the metaphor coming in of that are still at work, and the back of the enemy is broken on D-Day, and there's still this stuff. And his explanation is that's what happens at the cross. The power of evil and suffering and death is broken. That's D-Day. It's done. There's no way that evil's going to win. Are there still forces of evil at work that are trying to come back and do stuff? And then there will be a VE Day. There will be a final day where it's all taken care of and it's all done. But anyway, when I heard that, to me, it really was this revelation of, once again, if you go back to the cross and Jesus, if you can view everything I know about God, everything I know about the world is revealed at the cross.
And
I think it changes everything.
Satan and the powers that you just referred to, they've been in their death throes ever since.
Yeah, that's
and that's all that we're experiencing now. It's the last guttural gasps of evil trying to stay alive, and it knows it's been defeated, but it just won't. It's just taking this long to kill it all.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's exactly right.
Yep.
Well, and I think to the point you just made too of the final death throes, I think that's what's hard for us to see in our very small thing. I hear people talk about this is the worst time anyone's ever lived through of the pandemic. Yeah. The truth is, and not to minimize any of the bad things that have ever happened, but our world is so much better able to handle these things now, and the way that things are at work. And it's hard for us to imagine 2,000 years ago how there have been ripple effects from the cross. There are these ripple effects that really, when you pinpoint them back, started just after the crucifixion of Jesus with this church community, things like hospitals, things like our ability, every science which is birthed out of this Jesus movement. All of that I see as ripple effects of, as you said, the enemies in their death throes. They don't even have all their power. They're still hurtling things. And, when people say, is God sending the pandemic? What we know for sure is that James says every good thing comes from God. And that these things I see as the enemy just hurtling evil in any way that he can. And but in lots of ways we see there's good that still comes out of even these bad situations.
Yeah, because that's the nature of God.
That's right.
Yes.
So, yeah. And for me, it always comes down to, that it's like that statement that the disciples made when Jesus says, where are you guys going to go? And they said, well, we got nowhere else to go. And when I think of the question of pain and suffering, that's where I finally came down to is, and I think Tim Keller said this, he says, there is no other faith system, there is no other God that's been presented within the world that suffers with and for his people. And there's never been a God who entered into suffering until Jesus. Right. And so when for me, I look at the cross and I think, there is the undeniable truth is suffering is a reality. Pain is a reality. We're all going to go through it. It's just what do you look to for your hope and your explanation or your rationale for it? And it's either there is none or there is a God and it's pretty callous to it, or there's a God who embodies it for me. And to me, there's no option there.
Yeah, I don't say always, I didn't used to say this, but it finally became clear to me, pain and suffering is not a problem for Christians uniquely. Pain and suffering is a human problem. So
Right.
believing in God, not believing in God, I mean, if you don't believe there is a God who's good and powerful, and the way this, is set up, it doesn't suddenly make everything better.
Nope.
It just means now you have pain and suffering and you don't have any kind of solution
That's right.
to it. And it's not just uniquely a Christian problem, because I think uniquely for Christianity, the way Tim described it, the way I've heard other people describe it, is Christianity has never said, hey, God came into the world and everything's supposed to be right. If you just follow Jesus, everything's right. And that good things won't happen to people that follow. I mean, bad things won't happen to people who follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Christianity, as Cord's always said, the best person that ever lived had the worst thing ever happen to them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we've never gone around saying, if you just do right with God, bad things won't happen. No, it's the very best person ever, Jesus,
Well,
had the worst thing ever happen to them.
And there are faith systems, going back to you, that do promise that.
That's
that
right.
if you live the right way, you do the right way.
And
that
there
only
are
good
bad
things-
segments of Christianity that do
Sure.
that.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you just have enough faith, you won't have any problems. But inevitably, all of those people eventually die, which I guess is a problem.
You would think.
And I think you're the one that I've heard quote this the most, so you might be able to say, I think it's Philip Yancey that says, what's worse than being disappointed with God is being disappointed without God.
Yep.
That
right.
I might be disappointed with God, but man, that's way better than any kind of disappointment without God as an answer to that.
Absolutely. All right, so this coming Sunday, we start a brand new series. We already sort of alluded to it just a little bit, but we've called it Triggered.
Yeah, I really think, and I'll just say this for me, my hopes for this series are, I think there are a lot more of us that have deeply held beliefs, feelings, unhealed things in us that cause us to have triggers that we cover over or we try to compensate for instead of deal with. I think this series has tremendous potential. That's what I'm praying for, that God will unlock a lot of things that allow us to find some healing. I know there are a lot of people, we've been in a 19-year-old war, and so we've watched lots of soldiers come home with lots of these, and it's becoming a bigger thing for us to deal with. But it's not just soldiers.
No.
I mean, a lot of us have families of origins that left us with, triggers. We have created them from ourselves for bad choices. There are triggers.
I'll just say, because the three of us have been interacting with this material for weeks now, getting it ready to present to you guys, I have discovered so many things about myself.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's
We haven't
blown me
had this
away.
conversation among us, but me
Yeah.
as well. In dealing with this material, I have been helped by some of this
too.
already in my own life.
My wife and I are already using a lot of the language just even within our parenting. Because I'll say this, even if I feel like, my family's weird, but I feel like even when you talk about it,
His family is weird. I'm in it.
yeah, as I say, I feel like even growing up in in a fairly healthy family situation, I also come away with all these triggers. So
yeah.
any of us, even if you don't have severe trauma or significant events in your past that you can point back and go, oh, that's the thing that triggered me. All of us have these things, and my wife and I now use them a lot when we're talking about how to deal with our girls and how to deal with situations, because I think every parent can understand, and I think we were having this conversation at a different time, but when a 4-year-old can get you so angry, you go, this little tiny person should not be. Every parent knows what that experience is like. That's being triggered.
Wrong with me.
Right,
Yeah.
there's
What
something.
I think.
It's not
What is
this
wrong?
this
It's not
4-year-old.
that.
It's because you've all had that. Because I found myself saying it. You don't laugh because you're so angry in the situation. You go, why are you acting like such a child? And then you go, because you're the child, and
I
that
am
you're
the child,
acting
yeah.
the way
Yes.
that's appropriate for you to
Yes.
act. I'm not acting the way that I am acting like a child. So anyway, all that to say. And I took my 4 girls mini golfing this weekend, and I was very triggered. If you've ever taken 4 kids under the age of 8 mini golfing,
All
you
right.
also have been
So
triggered.
why don't you hang on to that? We'll talk about it next
There you
week.
go.
Because
Well,
we're
you-
going to talk about triggers next week
right.
when we present the
Yeah,
first week this coming Sunday.
I hope you'll all tune in. I also hope either online or in person, because you can invite people to either place.
Yes.
Yes.
You will help us get this material. Lots of us in the world need this, whether you believe in God or not. And this is material that can help you. We're going to certainly show you how Jesus, the writers of Scripture talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to make that clear, but this is really good stuff that lots of people need.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I'm going to cut it off right there because we're done. And number 2, it's almost time for first pitch.
Well, there we go.
So we'll see you next week.